What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. This is your favorite transparent YouTuber, Transparent Hoodie, back on the mic just to give you some Yu-Gi-Oh content. This time I wanted to actually make a video addressing this number one question that's always asked of me, either when I stream or when I'm just on different forums just talking about Yu-Gi-Oh, figuring out ways to improve my deck. And it's how to pretty much go about choosing a deck for you or building a deck in general, because I feel like sometimes this is kind of a self-explanatory statement for people that's been with the game for a very long time, but for a lot of people that are very new to Legacy of the Duelist, or Legacy of the Duelist is either their comeback to Yu-Gi-Oh or their first Yu-Gi-Oh game. I just wanted to give people a perspective of what to think about when you're building and choosing a deck. Right now, at first I had about like 7 things that I had on this list, but I can add one more thing to this list, which I'm just going to talk about in the video, but I'm gonna slowly just go through the list itself. And the number one and most important thing, that none of these things are in any particular order. I do know when it comes to every single individual Yu-Gi-Oh player, you all are in different levels when it comes to just dueling and your familiarity with Yu-Gi-Oh. So whatever one applies to you or whichever one best helps you, then that's pretty much all I want to leave this video up to you. You know, like if you could leave here with probably maybe 1 or 2 steps helping you, or maybe 1 or 2 steps giving you some perspective on how to go about building a deck, or just making a deck that you feel really confident and powerful with, I'll be happy at the end of the day. Right now I do have Link Evolution up. I just have the deck that I've been using kind of in the beginning stages of the game when I didn't have a lot of cards. This is the deck I was running. The side deck for the most part isn't legitimate. It's just cards that when I was gaining, I just threw them in the side deck just to keep track of them. And then the extra deck, obviously, as I got more cards and as I kept on dueling, opening packs, I was able to soup it up a little bit more. So yeah, this is the first deck I kind of used to kind of grind with in the game. But back to the list. Now, like I said, no particular order, but we're just going to go through the different things I listed down. So number 1, when it comes to building and choosing your deck, please, guys, play what you love. And this is a very broad statement, because at the end of the day, if you love to win, play what makes you win. You know, if that's playing competitive, well, that's definitely going to be playing competitive or maybe tier 1, tier 2 decks, then play that. Because at the end of the day, like when you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh and while you're playing, the most discouraging thing is always going to be whether or not you enjoy what you're playing. So if you're not having fun playing what you're playing, then obviously you're not going to be really happy with the deck that you built, because you're not really liking what the deck is fundamentally doing. Because the number one thing that a lot of you guys have to understand, that some of the decks that you see in the anime or some of the decks that you read in the manga, like not a whole bunch of them really are good. And I know there's going to be situations when you're either playing your friends, playing online, or just playing other people in general, where you're trying to use your favorite deck and you don't understand why your favorite deck isn't good, or you're not utilizing it properly, or how to go about it. So play what you love. Just to give you an example, the number one deck that got me into Yu-Gi-Oh, got me wanting to play Yu-Gi-Oh in RIL and just in general, is Blackwings. Like, I even have like a Blackwing deck profile saved up right here in my deck list. Right there. Like, I'm not going to showcase it yet because I do want to do a separate video on it. But yeah, I have a Blackwing deck profile that I'm playtesting, I'm using, and I'm really am liking. I just need to go on ranked a little bit more to see how it goes up against the meta. But for the most part, I love Blackwings. Blackwings is definitely that power deck that got me into the game and got me into exploring other and different decks. So that's number 1. Number 2. Know the field you're trying to play in, and that definitely piggybacks on number 1. So that's the number 1 thing. Like I was saying before, when it comes to just building your deck in general, or just having a deck, you need to know what field you want to play in. And fields is a spectrum, it varies. Because you could just be playing with your friends, you could just be playing online, you could be playing competitively, because for all these different types of things, you can and possibly need to utilize different decks. Because if you want to use something maybe fun, maybe not too high tier, probably something like, I want to say something along the lines of, let's say, Raid Raptors. You want to use Raid Raptors. Raid Raptors in this game is probably, I want to say, tier 3. maybe tier 4 a little bit, and you want to use Raid Raptors in this game, but you plan on playing ranked. And ranked is going to be filled with decks like Sky Strikers, decks like Thunder Dragons, decks like maybe DDDs. Like, there's going to be a lot of high tier decks that you're going to be going up against, and you're here using Raid Raptors. Not necessarily saying you can't make a competent and powerful Raid Raptor deck, but your win-loss ratio is not going to be consistent wins all the time. You're going to lose a lot of the time. So know the realm that you're going yourself into, because if you're finding yourself losing a little bit more than you personally like, and it's getting to the point where you're frustrated, or you just feel like the game is cheap, or you just feel like the game is unfair, then pretty much that's why you're not utilizing all the options you have to fight off some of the higher tier decks that this game has to offer sometimes. And that just goes for everything else as well. Like, you just want to build a deck that you could just have fun with, on top of just making sure that it's something strong enough that you could feel competent with. So even dueling your friends, right? If your friend is new to Yu-Gi-Oh!, don't use the craziest or the most strongest deck. At that point, you could just use something fun so both of you guys can play. Like, maybe you guys can use like a rank 4 deck that just spans rank 4 Exceed monsters or something like that. Very basic, a very basic deck where you just need limited link monsters, and you don't really need to utilize like crazy top tier cards that would help you online or just facing other high or competitive players. Like, you could just have a relaxing and chill duel. Hey, you can even throw in like maybe some OG cards, like play like OD Dark Magician, Red Eyes, Blue Eyes in a deck or something like that. Anybody will tell you that that kind of is just out there, but for the most part, because you're playing with a friend and this is not meant to be the most serious duel in the world, have fun. And that's the most important thing. As long as you're having fun, I feel like that's the number one thing that matters. And we're going to go into step number 3. Step number 3 is very important, and regardless of what level of player you are, this is very important. Practice makes perfect. Another thing I'm going to co-associate with that step is research. So the number one thing about your deck, right? Nothing is going to be perfect on the first try. Even if you net deck, like you go on YouTube or you go on a forum, Twitter, maybe Reddit, and you search up a deck. All because this person is finding success with his deck, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to find the same success day number 1. At the end of the day, this person that you're copying their deck is familiar with the ins and outs of said deck to the point where they know their combos on the fly. They know what they need to go for. They know their turn 1 to 2 to 3, and they know how to counter and be able to reestablish a board if needed. You need to be on that same level. I'm not saying don't net deck. If that's the easy way for you to pretty much pick up and learn a deck, by all means do what you have to do, but just don't expect always to win. Losing is the number one thing to help growth, because once you lose, you understand where you went wrong, you understand what needs to be better, and you understand what needs to change inside the deck fundamentally so it could work. Again, but make sure that coincides with the field that you're playing in, because that's very important as well. So practice makes perfect. Keep on dueling, keep on testing, keep on adding, keep on removing. That's all a part of the process to building the perfect deck for you, and something that you could say, you know what? I'm okay with this deck. This deck, to me, it feels good. Like, it feels good to use. Even if I'm not winning every single matchup, the overall just build just feels nice. And step number 4, I think we already talked about that. Don't be afraid to lose. Self-explanatory. You're just not going to always win in Yu-Gi-Oh! You're not. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a tier system based game where some decks are just stronger than other decks. If you want to play what you like to play, that is 100% fine. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. If you want to play Neo-Spacians, if you want to play pure E-Heroes, no mass changes, no nothing, don't let anybody sway you otherwise. But for the most part, the number one thing that you have to understand, those decks, because they're not the strongest decks in the world, you're not going to win all the time. And if winning is what you only want, like you only care about winning, like winning is your drive, like you don't ever want to lose, you want to be the best that no one ever was, then you have to kind of trickle back down to earlier parts of the video where I mentioned just like knowing the field, knowing what you want to play, and knowing why you want to play it. So that's that. Okay. So this is something I personally struggled with when I first started out in Yu-Gi-Oh! Obviously, I feel like all new Yu-Gi-Oh! Players will definitely struggle with this one step, because this one step requires a lot of research and a lot of familiarity with the game. But know the type of deck you want to build. And that might sound simple on the surface, but that's actually way more complicated than what you might think. Because Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm not gonna even sit here and lie to you. Like, when it comes to all the different terms of Yu-Gi-Oh, there's a lot of terms that goes for a lot of decks. There's turbo, there's anti-meta, there's stun. There's a lot of terms that go for Yu-Gi-Oh. So for example, right, I can use maybe my Blackwing deck as an example, where my Blackwing deck is turbo. So I only run monsters, spells, and hand traps. That's the only type of cards I run in my Blackwing deck, and I use most of my utility from my extra deck. My extra deck is all my utility. So pretty much you would consider that a turbo deck. You just need to know the type of deck you want to build and not just throwing in cards into a deck. Because I feel like that's where you get people that's just like, okay, I don't know what I want out of this deck, so what I'm going to do is just throw every rendition of a card in a 60 card deck and run with that. No, like, don't waste your time with these 60 card deck builds. Just sit down, figure out what you want to make, how your deck wants to function, and what best suits you. Because right now, the type of decks I'm just falling in love with are very combo heavy decks. That's why I'm using Blackwing. That's why I'm using DDDs. If you guys haven't noticed already, I plan on building Fluffles, Mask Heroes, and a couple other combo-oriented decks later on. But for the most part, I love combos. Like, I love the ability to utilize my extra deck as my utility so that my monsters could pretty much sustain my board and get me more options for plays. Because right now I've been playtesting DDDs. I don't know if you guys have seen it on my channel, but one of my more recent videos is my DDD video, and I just love that deck. I just love that deck to heck. So, number 6 now. Play with friends. Please play with friends. And this is not necessarily a tip for building a deck, really. This is just a tip just for getting into Yu-Gi-Oh! And just getting familiar with the cards. Because that's a very, very important thing. This step is for a lot of you beginners out there. Sometimes, seeing the most broken card ever, because you're using it, it's not broken. Because there's ways around what's quote unquote considered to be broken, top tier, or just overall just unstoppable, quote unquote. You know, like, I'm putting up quotes, by the way, quote unquote. So you need to get familiar with cards. If you're going up against an experienced player now that's using a quote unquote card that's considered to be broken, unstoppable, like it's hard to get over, then you're going to be in a very bad situation because your card matchups is not going to be good. You know, you're not going to know what proper card you could utilize to be able to overcome the situation, on top of knowing the effects of your monsters. So the best way to me to be able to overcome that small little hurdle, because it's not that hard to overcome. Like, once you just get into the motions of Yu-Gi-Oh, once you just get into the flow of playing Yu-Gi-Oh, I feel like this is just going to become a second nature thing where you're going just to understand and learn more about the cards that you're going up against more and more. So playing with friends just make that process easier, because at this point both of you guys are fairly new, if anything, and you guys are just building whatever decks you find cool or interesting or looks nice. And then you guys are utilizing cards that you think are powerful, and now you're just learning about different and new cards constantly from one another. And you could just do this with literally anybody, just people you're familiar with, so that you can build your card knowledge, because that's very, very important. Card knowledge. All right. And then we have number 7. Number 7 is definitely going to be know your matchups, right? So, for example, I'm not going to be using Neospatians against Thunder Dragons, and I mean pure Neospatians. I'm not going to do that to myself, because I already know that's a losing matchup. So me, like, because I see a lot of people when they play online, or when I hear they play online and stuff like that, they get frustrated, or they just either rage quit completely, right? And the rage quitting part, I really get, you know, I get it. Like, you don't want to deal with the whole idea of losing, but that's just not me. I rather lose. I rather know what my opponent has up his sleeve, because people, for the most part, they tend to overextend. So if anything, when I duel another person that's using some type or rendition of a deck, I get familiar with some of the combo play that they go for. But that's a side note. Back to what I was saying about matchups. Know your matchups. sometimes you're not gonna win. And again, I'm not gonna lie to you, sometimes it's not your fault. Your opponent is just probably playing something that's a little bit more powerful than the deck that you have, and that's okay. But just know you can be going and just fluttering a deck with all this new tech you're learning. You could flutter the deck with all these different cards that you feel that will really make it powerful, and you're still losing, and you're asking yourself like, how am I still losing? You have to understand that there's just certain decks that's just more powerful than other decks. And that is kind of like a back and forth argument that I was having on Reddit with another Reddit user. But for the most part, it's just like, it's something unavoidable. Like, that's why, again, knowing your field is very, very important. It just, all these steps coincide with one another very tightly, like very, very tightly. That's why knowing your field and what field you want to play in Yu-Gi-Oh is very important. You want to play casually, you just want to play with your bros, you want to play ranked, you want to play high level competitive. Like, that's, it all plays a part with one another. So knowing your field, knowing the type of deck you need to use for said field is very important. Stuff like this, you definitely don't need to rush. Take your time and just have fun with the builds. Okay. Now, this last step, step number 8, was something I just had to throw onto the list because I myself recently was able to find the benefit from this. And that's definitely, guys, communicate with the community. Not every single person that plays Yu-Gi-Oh is a complete scumbag or a complete, like, you know, just dry balloon. Like, not everybody is just so elitist in the community. Like, there are their elitist members, but you will and always will find genuine, nice people willing to help you, willing just to show you the ropes, willing to guide you on certain things. Because for the most part, like for myself, I was having not necessarily trouble with DDDs, but when it came to just what kind of plays I wanted to go for my, maybe my turn 1, maybe my turn 2, or maybe my recycling play if my board got wiped, like, users did help me with my deck. And also Blackwings. Like, I stream Yu-Gi-Oh very, very frequently on Carl66711 twitch.tv. I stream there. You can find the link in the description, but I stream a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh there, and my chat constantly just recommend cards I could possibly add into the deck. We conversate about different decks in general. Just, you know, we just talk Yu-Gi-Oh, and it feels really nice just to get that support system of people that knows the game, that's just nice and always willing to help you and just lay out that helping hand. Like, that's really, really dope to me. So yeah, those are my thoughts and my steps to building the perfect deck. Sometimes it's all about just playing what you like. And like I told you guys before, Blackwings was that deck for me. I will never let it go. I will always try my best to make it as top tier-ish as possible. Because right now I feel like when it comes to Link Evolution anyway, Blackwings or my Blackwing deck is at least tier 2. I think right now I haven't seen a deck that's completely tier 0 in this game where no other deck can touch it. I feel like for the most part when it comes to this game, decks are kind of evenly, like, they're evenly matched. They're definitely evenly matched. No pun intended. But yeah, definitely, guys, let me know what you guys think about the video. Let me know if any of these steps definitely help you just to decide or build a type of deck. If you have any more questions, like I said, guys, we're definitely a community out here, so leave your questions in the comment section down below and I'll take a look at it. I'll answer it. Also, don't worry, I will probably give you guys some of my stronger deck profiles, because all I really do here is I try to make the decks I love the strongest possible decks ever. Like, the decks I really feel strongly about, I feel passionate about, I just try to make the most strongest versions of them as possible. Not necessarily saying DDDs need my help to be strong, but decks like Blackwing, I feel like it does need the help and the guidance a little bit for Blackwing players that don't necessarily know how to go about building a deck like that, because the basic Blackwings, it doesn't help you. And I've seen people use Blackwings where they either run too many traps or they run too many hand traps, and their build is jarring. Like, their build is just not, it doesn't flow right with itself. But yeah, definitely comment any questions you have for me down below. Definitely comment anything that you feel like I missed or should have touched on a little bit more or elaborated on a little bit more. I'll answer your questions down below. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys listening. I hope you guys like this little change in Yu-Gi-Oh content from just duels to now just discussion videos. So you guys have yourselves a good one, and peace.